Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Newshour, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar. Coming up in the next hour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrives in Johannesburg for the G20 Leaders Summit to highlight India's views on growth, climate and AI. Indian diaspora gives the Prime Minister a grand welcome in Johannesburg in keeping with Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. It was India that championed the joining of the African Union into the G20. Zelensky discusses US peace plan with Army Secretary to confer with Trump and European leaders on ending Russia conflict. Niigata governor in Japan approves partial restart of the world's largest nuclear plant as Japan seeks to cut fossil fuels imports. Prime Minister Narendra Modi landed in Waterkloof Air Base in South Africa's Pretoria. The Prime Minister was received by the Minister in the President's office, Khumbudzo Nchavheni, at the Waterkloof Air Base. Upon arrival at the airport, the Prime Minister was presented a traditional welcome by presenters from the country of South Africa. The Prime Minister will be attending the 20th G20 Leaders Summit in Johannesburg, and this is a special summit as it would be the first G20 summit being held in Africa. During India's presidency of the G20 in 2023, the African Union had become a member of the G20. Prime Minister will present India's perspective at the summit in line with the vision of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and One Earth, One Family and One Future. After landing in Johannesburg for the G20 Leaders Summit, the Prime Minister was greeted with a warm and rousing reception by the Indian diaspora. Prime Minister Modi reached his hotel where members of the Indian community greeted him with traditional dance, music and Vedic recitations. Members of the Indian community gathered in large numbers, many waiting for hours to catch a glimpse of the Prime Minister. Children dressed in traditional attire welcomed the Prime Minister, while community groups showcased folk music and dance as a mark of respect and affection. Prime Minister interacted with them briefly, expressing gratitude for their affection and their contribution to India's global presence. Meanwhile, ahead of the G20 summit, top global leaders have begun arriving in Johannesburg. Delegations from Brazil, Vietnam, Malaysia, China and the United Kingdom have reached the host city. Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, Vietnam's Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh, Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, China's Premier Li Qiang, and the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who we saw earlier, have arrived in Johannesburg for the G20 summit. Well, preparations are complete for the G20 Leaders Summit in Johannesburg, South Africa, and the summit is scheduled to be held on the 22nd and 23rd of November. It's going to discuss issues such as development, climate crisis, the global economic imbalance. Well, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, is attending the G20 summit in Johannesburg.
सबका साथ की भावना से ही भारत ने प्रस्ताव रखा था कि अफ्रीकन यूनियन को G20 की स्थायी सदस्यता दी जाए। मेरा विश्वास है कि इस प्रस्ताव पर हम सबकी सहमति है।
The African Union was admitted as a member at the G20 summit chaired by India in 2023. This is the first time the G20 summit is being held in an African country. Host country South Africa has stated its focus on strengthening an inclusive, just, and sustainable global architecture. Representatives from 42 countries and organizations are participating at various levels in this summit. It includes 20 of the 21 G20 members, 16 guest countries, and representatives from 6 regional and economic groups. The United States has declined to attend, so its seat will remain vacant. Currently, the G20 members are Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, France, Germany, India, Indonesia, Italy, Japan, Mexico, Russia, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, South Korea, Turkey, the United Kingdom, the United States, the European Union, and the African Union. India placed the Global South at the center of the G20 summit held under its chairmanship. Following the same logic, this year's G20 summit has been divided into 3 major sessions, taking into account current circumstances. The first session will focus on issues such as inclusive and sustainable economic growth, trade, development, finance, and debt burden. The second session is on a resilient world, where they'll discuss disaster risk management, climate change, a just energy transition, and food systems. And the third session on a just future for all. That will include critical minerals, decent employment, and artificial intelligence. It is understood that the summit participants will present their proposals around these issues.
This is the first G20 summit that will be happening on African soil, and in that context will bring the spotlight on the development issues of Africa as also of the Global South.
Several reports will be presented to the leaders before the summit. There will be reports on global inequality, expert panels on Africa, and a review of the G20's 20th anniversary. In addition, several high-level meetings will be held: the Global Fund Replenishment Discussion, the Renewable Energy Pledge Forum, events related to the Compact with Africa, and a special session with the heads of African countries. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will meet several world leaders separately on this occasion. He'll also participate in the summit meeting of IPSA, or the India, Brazil, and South Africa.
On the margins of G20 summit, PM will be participating in the IPSA, India, Brazil, South Africa leaders meeting, as well as holding bilateral meeting with several leaders who will be present in Johannesburg.
So far, 130 of the 133 G20 meetings have been held. The final phase is underway at the Sherpa level meeting, where efforts are being made to reach consensus on the leaders' declaration. The Global South is certainly being discussed prominently, with Africa in particular at the center. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Johannesburg for the three-day visit to South Africa to attend the first G20 summit on African soil. And during his stay in Johannesburg, the Prime Minister will also be attending the 6th IBSA summit on the sidelines of the G20 summit. DD India correspondent Amritpal Singh caught up with the High Commissioner of India in South Africa on India's priorities at the Johannesburg summit.
As Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrives here in Johannesburg to participate in the G20 summit, the Prime Minister will be engaging with world leaders apart from participating in the meeting of IBSA and the G20. What is expected to transpire here over the next 2 days? I have with me the Indian High Commissioner to South Africa, Ambassador Prabhat Kumar. Ambassador Prabhat Kumar, what could we expect in Prime Minister's intervention at the G20?
Honorable Prime Minister is here for the G20 summit. There's a lot of excitement among the Indian diaspora and also in the government of South Africa and generally, because Prime Minister is one of the tallest leader. He is attending his 12th G20 summit, and the issues, of course, are of the global South, which Prime Minister will highlight, such as digital public infrastructure, disaster resilience, women empowerment, food security. These are artificial intelligence. These issues will be highlighted by Prime Minister in his interventions and interactions, and he is meeting the President of South Africa and many other global leaders.
India, during its presidency of the G20, Ambassador, pushed the agenda of the Global South, the South-South cooperation. That seems to be taking center stage here again at the Johannesburg summit. Has India, in a way, redefined how G20's agenda, how the priorities of the G20 were before India's presidency and now following India's presidency?
Yes, if you will recall, we had the presidency in 2023, during which we held 2 Voice of Global South summits. Those were virtual summits in which more than 100 countries participated, and the feedback from that summit flowed into the actual G20 summit. So India defined the agenda of Global South that way. You will recall that African Union became a member of G20 during India's presidency, and thereafter, now the G20 is more broad-based, and almost it incorporates 80% of the world.
So clearly over the next 2 days, the world leaders of G20 shall be discussing issues that affect the world, conflicts that are marring the world, tensions related to trade that are existing in the world today. But clearly, India's left its footprint on the G20 agenda by putting the issues and priorities of the Global South at the heart of the global debate. Amritpal Singh with cameraman Mohit Joshi for DD India in Johannesburg.
Well, our correspondent Amritpal Singh is standing by, and he's joining us from Johannesburg right now. Amrit, so the theme this year is solidarity, equality and sustainability. Clearly a theme, deeply associated with the Global South, and we just saw your report. But, to what extent is the Global South isolating the Global North in the G20?
Could you repeat the last part of your question?
I said, to what extent is the Global South isolating the Global North in this in the G20?
Okay, I wouldn't say the Global South is isolating the Global North at G20, but what it is trying to, get across to the Global North is that the priorities or concerns of the developed world, or what is called as Global North, cannot dictate the global agenda, because majority of the population resides in what we call the Global South, and it is to them, it is for them that the world needs to work together. And that's why the theme of solidarity, equality and sustainability, because issues like climate change, issues like disaster risk reduction are something, global warming are something that affects the world equally. So, the brunt of it is borne more by the developing countries or the global south, because, there is where the people, do not have access to, say, world-class healthcare. There is massive poverty in the global south. Development lags behind. The resources are not there. Even to fight climate change, technology is not there. So to end this kind of a divide, the technological divide, the access to opportunities, so that is what the global south is trying to assert at the G20, that the G20 may be a grouping of the biggest 20 economies of the world, but they really need to come together to work in tandem, hand in hand for the person who is standing in the last in the queue. So it is that what the global south is trying to tell the global north, and now G20 as a grouping, I could say, for the past 4 presidencies have been with the global south. Next year it goes back to the United States, because a cycle of 20 G20s have been completed by the Johannesburg summit. So the global south is far more assertive, and India, may I mention that India has led from the forefront and emerged as a leader of the global south, which countries of the developing world or the emerging economies look up to.
Right, Amrit, you do mention about how the next presidency is that of the United States. To what extent has the United States participated in the Troika in this last year in preparations for the, the summit agenda, with things like debt sustainability, disaster resilience, climate, and the like, under the Trump presidency?
The very fact that the United States chose to boycott this conference speaks about how, under the Trump presidency, the kind of importance they attach to multilateral institutions, especially like the G20, which are broad-based. And this is something which countries like India have been saying for a very long time, that global institutions need reform. Though there is lip service to commitment to shared goals like climate change, etc., but under the Trump presidency, we do not see the kind of push that was expected from a global leader like the United States to the concerns, to the aspirations of that part of the world where majority of the population arises or lives, and also the fact that these are issues of common concern. So that seems lacking, at least from the United States, if not the whole of the West, because the rest of the leaders are here to participate in the G20. So G20 goes on, as South African presidency has already said, that it goes on despite the United States boycotting this conference.
Right, and let's look at, well, the Global South has brought forth a very inclusive agenda over the last 4 presidencies. And now the U.S. will take over, and there's a lot of speculation as to what the U.S. is likely to put forward as its own agenda. One would think trade, because the U.S. president is dominant. I mean, that's his dominant thought, trade and tariffs. But AI, which is also part of this agenda, could be carried forward. So to what extent are we seeing some sort of, let's say, a meeting of minds on the key issues such as artificial intelligence moving forward?
Well, there is a meeting of minds on, artificial intelligence. There is meeting of minds on, critical rare earth minerals. But what the Global South is basically trying to put across, and which could be reflected in the Johannesburg Declaration, because there is a session tomorrow on critical minerals and AI, and the presidency of South Africa is pushing forward towards taking a more inclusive approach when it comes to finishing diminishing the technological divide, when it comes to storage of big data, the use of big data, etc. In principle, there is a meeting of minds, but what remains to be done is actions need to be taken on the ground by these countries. Now, these declarations which are adopted are, by consensus, but and what is not agreed upon is generally left out of the declaration. But clearly, it's not binding on those countries. So to go back, and so we've seen them stop short of, actually fulfilling the commitments they make at such conferences, Mark. So that is where the gap remains. But yes, there is a in principle meeting of minds on the issues you mentioned, Mark.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Amritpal Singh, for joining us from Johannesburg. Our next story, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that he will negotiate with Donald Trump on a US-backed peace plan that called on Ukraine to make concessions in order to end the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The White House claimed that Washington took into confidence both the parties before proposing the peace plan. The European Union also says that it would support the peace plan if it brings a lasting and just peace. Raghav Kumar Jha reports. After talks with a top U.S. Army official on Thursday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he was ready to work with Washington on a plan to end the war in Ukraine, and he expects to discuss it with President Donald Trump in coming days.
Since the first days of the war, we have taken one extremely simple position. Ukraine needs peace, and a real peace, one that will not be broken by a third invasion, a dignified peace, so that the conditions are with respect for our independence, our sovereignty, and the dignity of the Ukrainian people. And we must ensure these very conditions.
Under the widely leaked plan, Kiev would cede significant areas of Donetsk region of eastern Ukraine that it still controls, cut the size of its army, and pledge not to join NATO, proposals it has previously ruled out. The plan says Ukraine would have to limit its army to 600,000 troops and that it would receive robust security guarantees without providing further details. It makes several concessions to Russia, including that Crimea, Luhansk, and Donetsk will be recognized as de facto Russian territories by the United States. As per reports, Russia would be readmitted to the G8 group and receive sanctions relief. The White House has pushed back on claims that Ukraine was not involved in the drafting of the plan. The White House press secretary, Karoline Leavitt, said that the U.S. administration is having good conversations with both parties on how to end the conflict.
So they have been engaged with both sides, and these talks are continuing. As always, I'm not going to litigate the details of this plan as it's ongoing and it's in flux, but the president supports this plan. It's a good plan for both Russia and Ukraine, and we believe that it should be acceptable to both sides, and we're working very hard to get it done.
So far, EU has not officially received the 28-point US proposal to stop the Ukraine war. However, EU's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, said on Friday that the European Union would support any peace plan for Ukraine as long as it brings a lasting and just peace, and if it involves Ukraine and the EU.
As for the peace plan we understand that President Zelensky has been presented with, we have always said that any peace plan to work, it has to be with Ukraine and with the Europeans on board.
On the other hand, German Foreign Minister Johann Waderfull said on Friday that he sees a US-backed plan to end the war in Ukraine as a list of issues that need to be urgently discussed between Ukraine and Russia, but underlined that it was not a final plan. Raghav Kumar Jha's report for DD India. Meanwhile, the Kremlin has said on Friday that Russia had not yet received anything official from the United States about a 28-point US peace plan for Ukraine, but it was ready to negotiate. The Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that Moscow and Washington were not yet discussing the proposals in detail, but that contacts were taking place. Peskov also mentioned that continuing the war was pointless and dangerous for Ukraine, and the Ukrainians must make a responsible decision, take a responsible decision.
The Russian side remains committed to the results of discussions that took place in Anchorage. We know about possible modifications of approved formulas. but we have not received anything officially. There are certain ideas on the American side, but nothing substantive is currently being discussed. We are completely open. We maintain our openness to peace negotiations.
The governor of Japan's Niigata prefecture, Hideo Hanazumi, said on Friday that he would allow a partial restart of the Kashiwazaki-Kariwa nuclear power plant. That's the world's biggest plant, as Japan tries to revive its nuclear sector and also reduce fossil fuel imports. Hanazumi will still need to seek the prefecture's assembly vote for that's a vote of confidence on his decision during its regular session, which begins on December 2. The restart, in fact, would be the first for TEPCO since the March 2011 tsunami had destroyed the Fukushima Daiichi power plant. It would also be a breakthrough for Japan, after which, after that disaster had shut down all the 54 nuclear reactors in operation at the time in 2011, leaving it heavily reliant on fossil fuel imports, vulnerable to production shocks and supply disruptions. A crucial decision there by the Japanese prefecture. In a landmark development, India and Israel formally initiated negotiations for a comprehensive free trade agreement on Thursday by signing the terms of reference. The Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal announced during his visit, and he described the move as historic. He stated that dates for the inaugural round of talks would be finalized shortly, aiming to boost bilateral trade from the current $20 billion to $40 billion within 5 years. This agreement targets enhanced market access in sectors including information technology, agriculture, pharmaceuticals, and defense, building on a preferential trade pact since 2013. The Israeli Economy Minister, Nir Barkat, in fact, he hailed the step as a catalyst for innovation-driven growth, while the Indian officials emphasized mutual benefit for small and medium enterprises. Negotiations that were paused briefly due to geopolitical tensions now prioritize a swift conclusion to foster resilient supply chains. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal on Friday met Israel's Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Avi Ditscher, and both the leaders discussed ways to further strengthen strong cooperation in agriculture, leveraging Israel's expertise in precision farming, drip irrigation, desert agriculture, and sustainable agricultural practices. Earlier in the day, the Commerce and Industry Minister had visited the Perez Center for Peace and Innovation in Jaffa. And in fact, he spoke to the media and he said that India is looking to deepen collaboration with Israel to strengthen its own startup ecosystem. He emphasized that partnering with Israel's advanced innovation capabilities would accelerate India's journey toward building a world-class, future-ready startup ecosystem. Let's listen.
I believe we can collaborate with Israel to promote our own startup ecosystem, aspiring to take it to the levels of deep tech and high quality innovation at competitive prices, given the economies of scale that India has to offer. And I do think that whether it is cybersecurity, whether it's mobility, whether it's action against climate change problems like producing steel with less carbon, or it is the medtech devices sector, I think India and Israel can work together, can partner together, and innovation will find purpose, innovation will find scale, innovation will become the new way of working and living tomorrow.
India has achieved record total food production for the year 2024-25 compared to the previous year. India's Union Minister for Agriculture and Farmers' Welfare, Shivraj Singh Chauhan, released the final estimates of crop production for 2024-25 in New Delhi. He expressed gratitude to the nation's farmers for achieving this record high output. And he also welcomed the encouraging rise in the production of pulses and oilseeds. The minister said that India is witnessing the highest increase in food grain production in the last 10 years. From 251.54 million tons in 2015-16, production has now risen to 357.73 million tons in 2024-25.
Success to India's agriculture sector. Final estimates of crop production for 2024-25 states nearly 8% record growth in total food grain output. Food grain production rises to 357.73 million tons in 2024-25. Union Agriculture Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan expresses gratitude to farmers for achieving record production. Historic growth of over 106 million tons in total food grain. Oilseed output touches nearly 43 million tons, an increase of more than 8%. Record food grain output of 357.73 million tons last year. Wheat production reached a record level of 1,179.45 lakh tons, which is 46.53 lakh tons higher. Rice production reached a record level of 1,501.84 lakh tons, which is 123.59 lakh tons higher.
What's still to come here on DD India Newshour? We'll get you expert opinion on the Prime Minister's visit to Johannesburg for the G20 summit. Welcome back. You're watching DD India Newshour, and now let me introduce you to Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, Director at Jindal Center for G20 Studies and former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs. Thank you very much, Ambassador Bhattacharya, for being with us. Now, what global resonance do you think Prime Minister Modi's expected speech on, the vision of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one earth, one family, one future, is going to have at this current time?
I think given the geopolitical flux that we are currently undergoing, and given the fact that many of the leaders of the G20, particularly President Trump, is not there, it was very necessary that the G20 movement be given full substance and support. And I think that's going to happen with Prime Minister Modi's visit. Secondly, I think, in many ways, the idea of the Global South and of the leadership of the G20 framing an agenda which began with Indonesia, continued with India, Brazil, and now with South Africa, has solidified. And so we have a very strong agenda that is for emerging economies, developing countries, and for the aspirations of the Global South. And finally, I think this is the moment for Africa, which has been our historical civilizational partner. We're going to be hosting the India-Africa Forum Summit next year. So this is the time Minister Modi's presence is more than required. And I think he is going to go there to bring about the sense of consensus that we...
Indeed. Ambassador Bhattacharya, we seem to be having a little problem with your connection. I hope we will be able to re-establish, but if the audio line is clear, the Prime Minister will also be speaking on climate action. So what specific priorities do you think are we expecting him to highlight, energy transition, sustainability and the like?
I think Prime Minister is going to be speaking at all the three sessions, but you mentioned about the climate change and climate action, which is going to be in the sustainability session. And it's very important, coming on the heels of the understanding at Belém, which is not complete, but I think it marks forward momentum. This is the time for the G20 leadership to take it forward. And I think we're going to see a lot of action on that, because there will be a lot of consultation, not only on the fund that has now been sought to be created of $1 trillion, more steps on adaptation. We are falling short on mitigation, so we need to work much more on that. There is a big push, and now there is technology and funding that should come in for the kind of renewables that we wish to see in taking the climate agenda forward. And I think there was also hope that there would be much stronger national action. We are also going to present a national action by the end of next month. So I think on climate, we're going to see a much more optimistic scenario, particularly after the Belém meeting.
Ambassador Bhattacharya, also we know of India's role in championing the African Union's entry into the G20. So what sort of goodwill has this created, and does it also reshape the group's balance?
It does and it does not. I think essentially what the group now recognizes is that there is a very strong need for synergies between the global north and the global south. And I think the Prime Minister's efforts when New Delhi was in the leadership 2 years ago was to bring the global south, particularly the African Union, onto the table so that their voices could be heard and so that they could get onto center stage. And I think this time South Africa has done a remarkable job, because, you know, the 3 special outreach sessions that they did, which were on sustainability, which was held in Addis, on food security, which was held in Cairo, and on the industry part, which was done in Nigeria, they have been able to bring about a greater sense of balance within Africa. And now, of course, the summit itself is taking place in Joburg. So there is this voice of Africa. India has been a steadfast champion and promoter of the cause of Africa. We've always had great support, and we've had always great anticipation that Africa is the continent of the future. And today, with many of the problems resolved, not entirely, but many of the problems resolved within the African continent, their huge population, youthful population, their critical materials, their levels, the new industry that's coming in, and the new hope that is coming about with some of the progress made on debt indebtedness. We do hope that Africa will be able to play a more important role in playing that bridging role between the North and the South. And Prime Minister has been at the champion of all this for a long time.
Indeed, debt restructuring, debt issues are much more serious on a macro level. But, you know, on the micro level, the digital public infrastructure, women's empowerment, all this financial inclusion are key issues that India has brought forward. To what extent, you know, does it set the tone, in fact, for broader cooperation among the G20 members?
You know, when we are talking of the 3rd session of the G20 this time, which is on the resilience and the future-oriented aspects of it, we do see that there is great focus on the artificial intelligence, the kind of digital and the technology roles, innovation. And in all these, India has been in the forefront, not just for itself, but also in working collaboratively with other emerging economies and developing countries. And so the India-Africa partnership in this has been very solid. On global governance, for instance, India has really championed the cause and has brought in the African Union. But when we look at some of the hard issues of digital financial architecture, the kind of changes that are taking place, the central role that some of India's initiatives have taken. You mentioned about DPI, which is a very important one. The internationalization of the rupee, for instance, new modes of trade that can be worked out, which will give much greater leverage and build more diversified and resilient supply chains in which Africa will play a much more important role. So in all this, we see that particularly as we move towards the future, towards a more sustainable future, Africa will have a more central role in the days to come. And a lot of this has got to do with the fact that the African Union is now part of the G20 process in a more intimate manner.
Indeed, and you did mention in your first answer as well, and I'd ask you to reiterate it because I'm asking you a question also similar. You know, some of the major leaders are absent from this year's summit. And does it give more importance to Prime Minister Modi's interventions as the leader of the world's fastest growing large economy? And, you know, in many respects, also the voice of the Global South?
Well, the profile of India has obviously improved and has expanded in the last few years, in particular. So, as you mentioned, the fastest growing major economy, but not just that. We are today the fourth largest, going to be the third largest in a few years from now. So all that really makes a difference in terms of the voice that we have. But we also recognize that, just as we have a more inclusive approach towards development for our own country, we believe in a more inclusive approach for the global situation as well. And therefore, we want to take everyone along. The Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam concept is now become embedded in the G20 ideology. The fact that so many of the principal leaders are going to be not present, to my mind, will not dilute the importance of the movement. It will dilute some of the content and the fine nature of the discussions that would have happened if they were indeed present. But the movement continues to grow, and I think that's the important part. What will also become very important is that the most prominent voice that you will have over there will be that of India. And Prime Minister Modi has been at the forefront from the very beginning in outlining the agenda. A lot of the things that you see today, which are part of the three sessions, are those that were kind of articulated in the India presidency. Right. And of course, continuum of the four emerging economies, which have had this wonderful run of leading the G20 process. So India's role will be much more visible, and we've been famous for being consensus builders, and I think that's what is needed in the world today, and I think they will continue to play that role, helping their South African colleagues.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, Director of the Jindal Center for G20 Studies, former Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs. Thanks for being with us. Now, Afghanistan's acting Commerce Minister Alhaj Nuruddin Azizi is in India with a large business delegation marking a renewed push in bilateral trade. Tapas Bhattacharya has a report.
In a significant step for regional commerce, Afghanistan's acting Minister of Industry and Commerce, Alhaj Nuruddin Azizi, is on a 5-day visit to India, the second such Taliban ministerial trip in less than 2 months. The visit signals a steady, cautious expansion of economic engagement, even as tensions between Afghanistan and Pakistan continue to disrupt traditional trade routes.
I
would also like to thank the Indian government and their team and authorities for the warm welcome they have provided to us. And definitely it will play a positive role in the relations that we have had for a long time with India. And we will definitely continue this.
Azizi, accompanied by a large business delegation, held an interactive session with the Indian industry leaders in New Delhi, hosted by the PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry. The focus: building partnerships across dry fruits, gems and jewelry, mining, infrastructure, logistics, FMCG, healthcare, textiles, tea, coffee, and education.
Indian industrialists and traders see the potential of Afghanistan and the current enabling environment that we have already created for the traders. So it would be a very good opportunity in terms of exploring mining, industry, agriculture, IT, health. So there is a huge opportunity available in Afghanistan. I would like to kindly invite you to come and visit us.
With Pakistan frequently closing transit routes since 2024, hurting Afghan exports of fruit, carpets, and medicinal herbs, Chabahar Corridor has emerged as the only reliable alternative for large-scale India-Afghanistan trade. Last year alone, trade through Chabahar and the air cargo route touched nearly $900 million. For the Taliban administration, economic deliverables are now central. For India, the outreach aligns with its long-term connectivity goals. Tapas Bhattacharya's report for DD India.
India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh attended the International Conference of Chief Justices of the World in Lucknow on Friday. Speaking at this event, he highlighted India's role in global peace and harmony.
और साथियों, भारत ने हमेशा इंटरनेशनल लॉज का सम्मान किया है। आज भी हम इंटरनेशनल लॉज का सम्मान करते हैं। मल्टीलैटरलिज्म को मूल्य के रूप में, एक वैल्यू के रूप में हम स्वीकार करते हैं। विश्व के किसी भी हिस्से में संकट आया तो भारत अपने तन, मन, धन से सहायता के साथ वहां खड़ा भी रहा। भारत की नीति स्पष्ट है साथियों कि न्याय केवल नियम नहीं, धर्म है। न्याय केवल नियम नहीं, यह धर्म है। शांति केवल नीति नहीं, यह भारत की परंपरा है। और वैश्विक सद्भाव केवल डिप्लोमेसी नहीं, यह भारत की संस्कृति है।
A Tejas fighter jet crashed on Friday during the ongoing Dubai Air Show. The Indian Air Force confirmed that the pilot died after sustaining fatal injuries in the accident. The Indian Air Force also declared that a court of inquiry is being constituted to ascertain the cause of the accident. The 4.5 generation multi-role fighter aircraft took a nosedive while performing maneuvers in the sky during the air show. Very unfortunate incident. The second day of the IFI witnessed an important roundtable with ambassadors from various countries. The conference was chaired by the Minister of State for Information and Broadcasting, L. Murugan. And DD India's Deepika brings us this report from Goa.
So the second day of International Film Festival of India began with a round table on the discussion of co-production with the ambassadors of various countries. The event was opened by the Minister of State, Dr. L. Murugan, along with the Secretary. They spoke about the nuances of co-production, the benefits of co-production that both the countries can have and enjoy with each other, and they also talked about the rising concerns about piracy. Let's take a look at this report on how day two shaped up with this very important conversation on co-production with various countries. The second day of the International Film Festival of India opened with Ambassadors Roundtable on Co-Production, chaired by Minister of State Dr. L. Murugan. The event, aimed at welcoming and exchanging views with various country members on the benefits of co-production, witnessed the participation of around 10 to 12 countries who came from across the world to attend the 56th edition of IFI.
That each of our nations places on strengthening cultural ties, deepening creativity, partnership, and shaping a global future for the audiovisual and media industries. India's media and entertainment sector stands today at a defining moment. The industry projected to reach USD 31.6 billion in 2025. Driven by rapid growth in digital media, OTT platforms, live events, advertising, and emerging segments such as gaming and the AVGC fields like animation, VFS, virtual production of XR.
The delegation also discussed about the serious issues related to piracy and how it can hamper the creativity and originality of various intellectual properties.
India, with its vast talent pool, creative base and technological capabilities, is being seen as the studio of the world, a destination where global stories can be imagined, produced, and shared. For all our partnering nations, this evolving ecosystem offers enormous potential. Collaborating with India means not only engaging with one of the world's largest and most diverse audiences, but also gaining access to a global diaspora that embraces content from across cultures.
IFFI not only aims to celebrate global cinema, but with various government initiatives, it has also become home to foster the practice and freedom of cinema and creativity. Collaboration and co-production are the main keys and the main drivers of the 56th edition of International Film Festival of India, where creativity meets technology. Discussing with various ambassadors of more than 8 to 10 countries, the minister himself ensured that people are invited to India and are open to collaborate with the Indian cinema. With camera person Senthil, this is Deepika reporting for DD India from Goa.
And the much-awaited Creative Minds of Tomorrow 48-hour challenge began on day 2 of the International Film Festival of India. Deepika tells us more about this unique challenge, its features and benefits in this exclusive report.
The second day of International Film Festival of India also witnessed the beginning of the 48 hours Creative Minds of Tomorrow challenge. Now this unique challenge offers a wide range of opportunity to the young minds with experienced stakeholders. Let's take a look at this next report. Day 2 of IFFI witnessed the launch of Creative Minds of Tomorrow, an initiative by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting and the National Film Development Corporation. The event invites students from across the world to participate in the 48-hour challenge of bringing out the creativity to the world. The event is designed to discover, nurture and spotlight the rising stars of the Indian film industry.
We have been releasing short films on TV and online for the last 25 years. Shorts TV came to India in 2017, and we wanted to change the way the world looks at Indian short films. And we've worked with so many great, amazing young directors, and we have been so thrilled at the way this program has started now to bring together talent from across the country and produce films that are being seen, and this is something that has never happened.
The initiative has seen 4 successful editions taking place on the sidelines of IFFI. And in the landmark 5th edition, CMOT features 100 young talent in a total of 13 film crafts from across India to showcase their skills on a global platform at one of Asia's most prestigious film festivals. So there you saw that how the students are really excited, and so are the organizers for the Creative Minds of Tomorrow challenge. The challenge begins 48 hours from now. We will have the final winners as well. With camera person Senthil, this is Deepika reporting for DD India from Goa.
Sports news now, and the Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry on Friday hosted the 15th Global Sports Summit, Turf 2025 at Federation House in Delhi. Held under the theme Indian Sports Forging the Path to Global Excellence, the summit brought together global leaders, policymakers, athletes and industry experts, reaffirming its status as one of India's most influential platforms on the business of sports. Prominent dignitaries in attendance included Hari Ranjan Rao, the Secretary of Sports, P.T. Usha, the President of the Indian Olympic Association, Philip Green, who's Australia's High Commissioner to India, and Gopal Bagle, who's India's High Commissioner to Australia. Now, this year, Australia joined as a partner country, with Australian High Commissioner Philip Green marking his presence at the summit. The event also focused on strengthening India's sports ecosystem and accelerating its global ambitions. On this occasion, the IOA President, P.T. Usha, was presented with a Lifetime Achievement Award.
A lot of things are happening in the sector of sports in India. The window of opportunity for Indian sports has opened, and I think collectively it is our now endeavor to capture this movement and take it to the next level. In 2036, India wishes to host Olympics. We are going to make an effort to do that. But to be able to do that, we should also ensure that India remains in the 2036 Olympics among the top 10 medal tally countries. And it's not that easy, but it's not difficult either. We have a roadmap how to reach the medal tally.
The IOA is committed to making sure every child who dreams has a clear pathway, proper training, sports science, nutrition, mental support, everything they need to truly rise. The second, build strong system for stronger champions. I learned early that discipline is not just for athletes, it is for institutions too. We need fair selections, transparent process, and ethical governance.
Well, India's shooters once again showcased their talent at the Deaf Olympics in Tokyo today. Shaurya Saini delivered a stellar performance in the 50-meter rifle 3 positions event, securing the silver medal with a score of 450.6 points. The gold medal went to Germany's Haas, while Ukraine's Petrenko claimed the bronze. Adding to the glory, Shaurya Saini also set a new world record, qualification record in fact, scoring 584 out of 600 points. Meanwhile, Kushagra Singh Rajawat impressed by qualifying for the finals with a score of 575, but narrowly missed out on a podium finish. Indian boxers gave a stellar performance at the World Boxing Cup finals, where India won a total of 20 medals, including 9 gold. This was the best performance of Indian boxers till date. And on the success of the Indian boxers, the Boxing Federation of India President Ajay Singh not only considered the success of these players as a big one, he also expressed confidence that this effort will continue and they will do better in the future. Watch this conversation with our correspondent Gaurav Kumar.
Right now we have with us Boxing Federation of India President Ajay Singh. Ajay, lots of congratulations for this performance of Indian boxer. And what you would like to say about this performance, and what you still think that how much Indian boxer can go from here?
Firstly, it's a stupendous performance. There's no doubt about it. I think that in no championship at this level in the world has India ever got 20 medals, including 9 gold medals. In fact, I think that no country in the world has ever got 9 medals and 9 golds and 20 medals in a championship of this sort in boxing, ever. Today, India is ranked number 3 in the world. Several of our players are ranked number 1 in their weight categories. That should not make them complacent. It should make them even more determined to ensure that they continue to deliver for the country. Nikhat is a
Well, and with that, it's a wrap on this edition of DD India News Hour. You can get the latest news and updates on the DD India mobile app, available on Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code and download it now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Mark Lynn. From all of us here in Delhi, thank you very much for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.